Welcome back to Real Lives, Real Money, the show that's all about getting your money together.
That's right.
All right, achieving financial independence.
Yes.
I'm Cheryl Creuzot, President Emeritus of Wealth Development Strategies, and this is
Nettie Jones, licensed psychotherapist here in Houston, Texas, and private practice.
Excellent, excellent. So today we're talking about a little bit different subject.
Yeah.
We were talking about
Yeah.
women last time and the knight in shining armor.
Yes.
And how that knight gets delayed a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
We have talked about before that the average age of widowhood is 57.
Wow.
And
57.
we talked about half of marriages ending in divorce.
Yes, yes.
So we as women need to be independent because at some point in time, most likely we are going to be alone.
Wow. That is an alarming comment.
Yeah.
That at some point we're going to be alone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's tough. Speaking of death, I know in your practice you deal with all sorts of things. And how do you deal with the grief that comes with the loss of a spouse?
Yeah, you know, as a therapist, that's one of the things that I feel is really challenging, is to work with people who's lost a loved one. I go where clients are. You know, I start where they are, and grief is a process. It's unique to everybody, and so giving that person permission to experience whatever it is that they're experiencing. And what I find is not only are they grieving the loss of the loved one, they're grieving the loss of, you know, how they have to grieve not growing old with this person, how their living arrangements may shift and change, their financial situation may shift and change. And so the grief is just not about the loss of that loved one. They're grieving multiple things, you know, and sometimes it's just very difficult. Yeah.
It is difficult. And in my practice, I see not only grief, but grief and fear.
Oh yeah.
So we can't take away the grief, but there are things that people can do to take away the fear.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah.
to do the preparation. And I think a lot of the fear comes from when a spouse dies, just that panic of what do I do next? What do I do
Yes.
first?
Yeah. yeah.
All right? And so it's very important for our clients to do the proper estate plan.
Yeah.
Very, very important to get your wills done. And your will is just a document that says who your things go to, all right, and when they get them.
Yeah.
If you have minor children, it's critical to have a will
Yes,
because the
yeah.
will say who will be the guardian
Yeah.
for your children. There are other what we call ancillary documents that an estate attorney will typically do with the will. One is, people call it a living will, but it's really called a directive to physicians. That's whether or not you want to be on life support.
Right,
all
right.
right? And each spouse makes that decision. I don't want to be plugged up. My husband wants to be plugged up.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I say fine.
Yeah.
The other is a durable power of attorney, and that gives the surviving spouse the ability to step in the decedent's shoes and write checks
Okay. Okay.
and just take care of business.
Right.
The other is a healthcare power who's going to make healthcare decisions.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
For surgery or what have you.
Yeah.
All right. And the last document is what we call a HIPAA form. It's the privacy form.
Right.
So that whoever has that healthcare power can get the medical information necessary to make the right decisions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what's so interesting is that all of the things you just mentioned are so very important, and there's so many people that do not have these things in place. And I think it's an uncomfortable conversation.
It is uncomfortable.
And the time that you feel that you need it, unfortunately for some people, is not the time.
That's right.
It's after the fact.
That is one of the hardest things in my practice, is to get clients to get their will done. And I don't know if it's just dealing with their own mortality.
Yeah, or if they're just too busy, or it's the uncomfortables. I mean, think about like Prince. He didn't have a will. How long did they keep James Brown on ice? I mean, you know.
And people that certainly have the resources.
They have the
to
resources,
do the proper
but
estate planning.
yeah, yeah.
One other thing I want to mention too is it's very, very important to make sure that a family has adequate liquid assets or life insurance. All right, to make sure that that surviving spouse and possibly children
Yeah.
can stay in their same world.
You know, it's real interesting when people, die, and when everybody's kind of scared, especially when it's an unexpected death, right? And you find that services are delayed, and you're like, why? Why is it taking so long? Because a lot of the family has to get money so that they can pay for the burial.
Yes.
So they can pay for a plot, you know. And so death is just not something that people want to go and talk about. Yeah.
Well, and it's one of those things that's certain. All right.
Yeah, that is true.
One of those things.
Death
that's
and taxes,
that's
right?
Right. That's
Yeah.
right. So we have to plan for it.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful story in my book
Okay.
about a woman who very much in love with her husband, a young couple, and she comes home from work and asks her husband, is he hungry? I'll go ahead and prepare dinner.
Okay.
And he says, no, honey, I've eaten. I think I'll go outside and I'll take care of the lawn.
Okay.
And they had a huge backyard, one that she was really afraid to go into because she didn't like snakes.
Oh boy.
One of those,
Oh boy.
all right?
Yeah.
So she goes to run an errand, comes back home, goes in the kitchen and fixes her a little bite to eat, and it starts getting dark. And she begins to get very worried. So she picks up her cell phone and calls her neighbor.
Okay.
She's afraid to go out in the dark in the yard.
Okay, yeah.
But she's worried now because he's been outside too long. Her neighbor comes running over and she goes towards the backyard and he tells her to call 911. Call 911.
Yeah.
The short story was he'd had a massive heart attack,
Oh, wow.
Earl, and Sharon was a widow at 54.
Oh wow. 54.
So a young person.
54. Wow.
The period after that was not only grief, but she was paralyzed with fear because she didn't know. She was a very traditional woman. He paid the bills.
Yeah.
He tried to tell her during their marriage, let's sit down and go over these things. So if something ever happens, you'll know where things are. But it took about 3 weeks with the love of her friends, getting her up, getting her back on her feet. And once she was able to come to herself, she remembered that he said, honey, if something ever happens to me, go look in this drawer.
Wow. Yeah.
And in that drawer was a listing of all
Wow.
of the assets, all the bank accounts, all the credit cards, the mortgage information, everything that she needed. All of his life insurance, his retirement funds.
Wow.
And just the relief.
Yeah.
Just the relief. And once we worked through everything and got everything together and she was able to get on her feet, she said, Cheryl, I went to bed last night and Earl came to me.
Wow.
And he says, I'm going to go now. You're going to be okay.
Oh my gosh. What an amazing love story.
He was an amazing man.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, that's a great way to end the segment. Oh, you know what? You were telling us about all of these things. For instance, like, she remembered, he said, go to the drawer, and he had everything written out.
That's right.
And that was great for that couple, but what can people, there's an organizer.
That's right.
That people can go on your website, and it's called the Beneficiary Guide.
Right.
And tell them a little bit
If you go to
about
our
this.
website, wealthdevelopmentstrategies.com, go under the resources tab, and you'll find a booklet that's an organizer that'll help you lay out all your assets, liabilities, all of your advisors, passwords, retirement plans, life insurance, etc.
Yeah.
And that takes away the fear.
This is a must-have.
That's right.
Yeah.
Must have.
And we can't close without talking about your book,
Well,
Real
thank
Lives,
you.
Real Money.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Where can they find this?
At reallivesrealmoney.com.
All right. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.